So there's a whole section in the Squatter Defender course all about squatter prevention. There's a whole lot of little things you can do. And as we all know, Kirby, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. But my favorite by far and the biggest thing that you can do is just to get a very simple, portable alarm system that sends a notification to your phone. And in the Squatter Defender course, we give you 50% off anything that you get from Simply Safe. I don't work for them or have an affiliation, but I get a good deal from them. And it's what I use personally in all my unoccupied units. We just take the tower, and the motion sensor, and the camera, and that 50% off coupon that I give you with Squatter Defender, it also includes a free camera. And you throw it in the rental. There's no professional installation. It costs like, I don't know, $120 or something all in, maybe less than that. And if somebody goes inside the property, you look at them and you see if it's someone you know. If it's the plumber and he's a day early, okay, you're good. But if he's setting off the alarm, or if he's triggering the motion sensor, or you're looking at him in the camera, like at the camera, or you have the camera pointed at the door and there's a bunch of packages piling up that someone forgot to pick up or something, you know about it. And that's really the crux of this. The squatters need time. Time is not on your side when it comes to squatting. If you have a squatter who's in there for a week, a month, or longer, you're dead meat. You're gonna have a serious problem. But if a guy comes in and, busts the door down or picks the lock or whatever, and you're like, okay, I don't recognize this guy, and you're on it within like the first hour or first 24 hours, there's not going to be much of a chance that you're going to have trouble convincing a cop. Because I've personally sent, I'll say, hey, I got an issue here and I've got a video. The cop will be like, all right, text it to this number. You can send videos to the cops that are investigating. Be like, all right, here's the guy busting in my door or picking the lock. Clearly he doesn't have a key. He doesn't live there. Like, he doesn't have any furniture. Get rid of this guy.
Yeah.
You're making this decision easy for the police officer. And so if you don't have a squatter, make sure that you know who's coming in and out of your unit. And the easiest way to do that is with a simple burglar alarm, and get 50% off of it. And if you buy my course, that's the short answer.
Yeah. That's awesome. We try to make our properties the higher hanging fruit, so that if somebody's going to choose, they're going to go to the one that's not well lit, doesn't have the video camera out front, doesn't have the security alarm sign in the front yard. So we try to do all those to prevent it. But I suppose, anything can still happen.
Anything can happen, but if you've got the camera and you got the security alarm, these people are looking for free housing. They're looking for, just like you're saying, Kirby, they're looking for the low-hanging fruit. They're looking for an easy scam, somebody who's going to be easily victimized. And if you got, just like you're saying, Kirby, low light, no cameras, no alarm, they're thinking, okay, plus there's not a lot of bookings on this place. Yeah, I could go. There's not another booking till the middle of April. Yeah, I got 2 weeks. I'll move all my buddies in there. I'm going to throw a big party and it'll be rad. They won't even know about it. So that's what, and they're casing these places. They're not just like, that one over there. No, they're going about it carefully.
Yeah. So if I showed up to a property and I found that a squatter's in there, what's like the first few steps that I can take to handle this situation?
Well, the first thing you do is you say, who are you? Get the heck out of here. So you got to basically kind of size up your situation, because sometimes you've got somebody who's maybe like just confused, or then you've got a person who's faking confusion, obviously. And then you've got somebody who's like, all right, this guy is on the path to willful deceit. He says, what are you talking about? I have a lease. So you're sizing up the squatter and the situation. So you're asking him questions, see if you can get his name, see if you can figure out what's going on. But then your first course of action most of the time is to just call the police. But if you've got a situation, there's one case study that I really loved where a guy went up to his property. There was a guy in there and he says, who are you? Like, what are you doing here? And he'd been there for a while. He'd already moved in his friends and his furniture. It was all established. And the guy says, well, I live here. Yeah. And so he knew right away that he had himself, a squatter situation. And he looked at the door. There's no sign of forced entry or anything. So what does the guy do? What does the owner do? The squatter slams the door in his face, and so what he's do? He kicks in the door. He smashes it right off the hinges, and calmly just walks back to his car and says, "Officer, you're not going to believe this, but a guy like broke into my house, and he's moved a bunch of stuff in. You got to get rid of him." But what he did is he basically made a sign of forced entry. So that when the cop came, he's got signs of forced entry. He's got a dirtbag living there.
Game. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, you're kind of turning the tables on them. So that's one of many things, examples that I give in my squatter defender course. It's like, yeah, if you encounter a squatter, here's what you do, but it's very situationally depending on what type of person it is, how long they've been there, and if you've got a guy who's immediately pointing a gun at you or something like that, saying like, "Hey, get the heck out of here," you got to get the heck out of there. The whole point of all these laws that are, causing this problem is to prevent violent altercations. And so if you want to go Rambo, there's ways you can do that and not run as many risks. But I really highly encourage people to not do stuff like that, because, there's people that if you kick in their door, then they will attack you. And you don't want that. No matter if you're a big, strong dude or little, it doesn't matter. A gun knows no size. So, or a pew pew. I don't want to get you demonetized. But anyway, basically, you got to use discretion in pretty much every situation, and I teach a little bit of that in the course.
Yeah. And is it ever smart to negotiate with one of these individuals? Like if you start offering cash for keys or something, or does that typically backfire?
Oh boy. Yeah. I mean, I absolutely, I detest cash for keys, but with that said, it is a viable solution in a lot of situations, because a lot of people don't want to go the routes where they're going to be doing any of the, we'll call them alternative methods to getting rid of a squatter, the unconventional methods. And I teach those in the squatter defender course. And I basically just put a big asterisk saying yeah, you can do this, but at your risk. Yeah. They're going to be going through the court system, and they're going to be doing it in that way of just removing them as a tenant. They give them the rights as a tenant, and they're going to be removing them over the course of several months. And that is court costs, paying your lawyer. The other lawyer might find holes in, what you've done if you enter the property without being authorized, things like that. These things can cost you money. And if you're staring down the barrel of 30, 40 grand in court costs and lawyers' fees, and the guy says, "Hey man, I'll leave if you just give me $5 grand," you're going to be thinking, oh boy, I mean, you're emboldening the squatter. You're encouraging them. They're just going to find another victim. But what's the point here? What are you trying to do? You're trying to reclaim your property for as little money as possible. And if you've got a way to do that without having to resort to any methods that could get you or anybody else in trouble, and all it's going to cost you is $5 grand, 9 times out of 10, I actually do encourage people to go ahead and do that. Even though it emboldens them and all the bad reasons, at the end of the day, there is no cheap solution to getting rid of a squatter. It's all expensive. Whether you're hiring contractors to squat on the squatter, or whether you're hiring a lawyer, or if you're doing it yourself, you've got danger. But there's no cheap way.
Yeah. Yeah, and it feels just like the principle of the matter. It would be so hard to hand over $5,000 to get somebody who doesn't own your property out of your property, who's literally lying to your face. But I totally get what you're saying, that sometimes you got to bite the bullet to get somebody out of there.
It's ludicrous, yeah. But if you stick around in real estate investing long enough, sooner or later you're going to have to pay off somebody who really doesn't deserve it. And I've had to do it a few times in my career, and I've not liked any single one of them. But, it's only money. You suck it up and you move on.
Yeah. You also kind of specialize in deed fraud. How is this different than a squatter situation?
So I didn't even know what that was. And a lot of people don't know what it is, but It really got my attention when I was doing this research, just because of how incredibly easy and insidious this crime is, deed fraud, aka title fraud. So what happened was I was doing research on all these squatting cases, just trying to make sense of it, like trying to get some sort of playbook so that I could help people out, because a ton of people had contacted me asking for help, and with squatter situations, don't know where to turn to. And a couple cases I started looking into involved deed fraud, and what that is it's when somebody forges the deed. That's just a single piece of paper that's notarized and has the grantor and grantee, files it with the county, and takes the name out of Kirby Atwell LLC and puts it into Title Fraudster LLC or Title Fraudster. So after the deed is transferred, it's in the criminal's name, or more often than not these days, it's in a fake ID that they've stolen. They've stolen the identity of somebody online. They've gotten their social and they got all their stuff, and just taken an ID that has their picture on it, and that has the scammer's signature, so that when they contact a wholesaler or a realtor to sell the property that they've researched, like has all the equity, no debt or very little debt. So I think the average home equity now is like 300 grand in like every house in America on average. So that's how much they stand to make. So they sell the house really quickly. The title company pulls it up, says, all right, wow, looks like this just traded like 4 weeks ago. All right, looks like he's selling it for $5,000 more. Sounds good. Let's send a notary out to this guy. The signature on the license, the picture is a perfect match. And the guy who originally owned the house, Kirby, your house, if it got stolen, you don't know about it because it sold 4 weeks ago, and you don't check your title online. Really, like nobody does.
Yeah.
And if you don't go through title and escrow, which of course, if you're stealing the title and forging the deed, you don't go through title and escrow, so they're not going to notify you. And the county, they move at the speed at the speed of molasses in January, if they even notified you to begin with. And so by the time you find out about it, your title's been stolen and your equity is completely gone. And then when you call up your title insurance company, they're going to tell you that you have an Alta owner's policy. That's the most common policy that you get for title insurance. And they're going to say, all right, Kirby, bad news. Your equity is gone because we don't cover from the date of the policy forward. We cover from the date backwards in time. So if there's like a painter that got stiffed, 7 years ago, yeah, we'll pay him off because, we missed that. But in this case, this is fraud and impersonation, and it's after the policy date. And the standard Alta owner's policy does not cover this. So you are in a world of hurt. There's people who have their entire net worth, their life savings essentially is in their home equity. You grow old, get a reverse mortgage with your 300 grand of home equity, and that's what you live off of. So these cases really got my attention because I was thinking, forging a deed is so freaking easy. It's a piece of paper and a stamp. This is is this the perfect crime? This is mind boggling to me. So I tracked down the preeminent deed fraud lawyer in the country, and I got him on the phone. I was like, dude, is this real? Get real. Because if you Google deed fraud, you get a lot of articles about it happening. But then you've also got a lot of discussion it's not fake, but it almost never happens. And most of those articles are kind of old, but it's one of those things where there was 2,000 cases, 4 years ago. Then there's 4,000, there's 8,000. Now there's 10,000 per year. So it's growing in popularity because it's such a viable scam. And so so I was like, well, so what do people do about this? And the guy told me.
So I was going to say, it feels like it would happen all the time because the way you described it, it's like there's no prevention.
Yeah, you got to be a little sophisticated, identity theft. You can steal someone's credit card or their social security number online on the dark web pretty easily. So you got that, but then you got to have some working knowledge or some sort of playbook on how you go about forging a deed. What does a deed look like? And how do you file it with the county and all that stuff? So it requires some level of specialized knowledge, but not a lot. It's like an afternoon of internet research, basically, which is pretty wild. So
how do people prevent this from occurring all the time?
So that's just the thing. As of right now, you can't prevent it from happening, but why is it bad? It's bad because you lose your home equity, right? That part doesn't happen until like weeks or months after your title is stolen. So the way that you prevent your equity from being stolen is you get an alert that your title has changed. And unless you're sitting there refreshing your browser every morning, like, okay, yep, still in my name, still in the name of Kirby, still in the name of Kirby every day, nobody wants to do that. So there's a service that I provide called Title Fraud Defender. And if you sign up, it's just a few bucks a month. If your title changes, I let you know right away. And then you check on it and you're like, oh, that one just sold it. No big deal. And then you can swap in another property. But if something's wrong, you're like, wait a second, no, that's not me. Then you can file an affidavit. You call your title company. You make sure that this guy is not going to take loans out against it, and he's not going to sell it. So your equity is safe. That's what you do. And then from there, you gotta fix it. And we tell you how to fix it. And so you gotta go through a process. But it's not quite as simple as calling up the registrar and being like, hey, yo, that was a fraudulent deed. Like it's a chain of title. So you gotta get you have to have like legal action to change it. And that part sucks and takes a minute, but it's not anywhere near as bad as losing your equity.
Yeah, no kidding. And I kind of just assumed we had enough checks and balances in place to prevent this. I spent some time in Kenya, and when you drive around there, you see not for sale signs. So here we have for sale signs. There they put signs in their front yard saying not for sale because they don't have a good title process. And so it's like that's how they protect themselves, by just letting the public know that they're not selling, even though somebody might be trying to say that they're selling this house. It was really interesting.
Wow.
So yeah, and we also had a property that we were selling one time that was listed on the market, and someone reached out to us and said, I was just about to send over the deposit for this rental, but just want to check with you one last time or something like that. We're like, what are you talking about, rental? And they sent us this whole listing, this rental listing that was created off of our property that we had just rehabbed and were listing on the market, that somebody overseas just created a rental listing and said, hey, send me the deposit money. And they listed it super cheap. So people were just, in line to rent this house, and they didn't even own it or control it. So
that's
I know that
everywhere these days.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really, the extent of these scams is just, it's kind of mind boggling.
It's pretty mind boggling. Someone will make off with, like a few grand of somebody's money in that way. And that's messed up. And that's really bad. So, the way you prevent against that is, you just got to watch really closely, like who's going in and out of your house, just like the squatters. And if someone's going to rent a house, chances are they're going to want to take a look at it inside. People rent places sight unseen for sure. Like that definitely happens.
Yeah.
And, but losing a few grand and having to have to tell somebody, hey, sorry, but, you can't be here. That's one thing. But if you get your title stolen and then sold out from underneath you, that's like actually like irreparable, terrible damage. And, land investors in particular have been hit by this. A guy told me that in Florida, he does land investing in Florida, and he says that it's growing like crazy down there because there's no house. It's not like you got to get an appraiser to go check it out. Maybe you'll drive by it, but it's not the same as if you're selling the place.